Welcome back to another episode of Into the Airbnb, where we talk with Airbnb hosts about their short-term rental experience. Our guest for today is Kristin LeQuier, based in Alto, Georgia. She manages 2 listings, the independent lodge in her home's basement and a camper in her backyard. In this episode, Kristin will share with us about her journey on Airbnb, useful insights about her market, and her personal experience renting part of her house where she lives with her children. This episode is sponsored by Airbnb, the only one analytics dashboard for short-term rental investors and managers, where you can find precise Airbnb data such as occupancy rate, revenue, average daily rate, and so on. So, without further ado, let's get into it. So, can you tell us how did you get started on Airbnb?
Sure, absolutely. About 5 years ago, I became a single mom, and so I needed to find a way to support my children. I had been a stay-at-home mom for about 20 years and still had children at home. So for me, going out and getting a traditional job was not very convenient. And I had some friends that ran an Airbnb and told me all about it and how successful it was. And I thought, wow, if they can do that, I can too. And so I just worked towards getting a portion of my house ready to list on Airbnb.
And at first, how was your experience renting that portion of your house?
It was far better than I expected. Almost immediately, I had bookings and they were pretty consistent.
And how did you decide to move that part of your house that you have to the basement? Because you told me you're currently listing your basement as a listing.
Yes, our basement was already, I don't want to say perfect for an Airbnb, but it had its own bedroom. It was a finished basement with 3 sets of French doors that open to the outside. There's a terrace level. It had a full bedroom, a full bathroom, a kitchenette, fireplace. So really all I had to do was add in a few more kitchen amenities so that it could be completely separate from our house, close off the door leading to our house, and just get it in shape for, I also added some bunk beds down there too. So it's more family friendly. But that was about it because the space was already fairly well set up and functional to use as an Airbnb.
That's a great way to start. And about the camper, because you told me you're also using a camper that is out in your yard.
Yes, ma'am.
How did you acquire that, and how did it came to you that you could do that?
Well, during the quarantine time, it seemed that a lot of people were traveling to and drawn to unique destinations. So it seemed like traveling to stay in campers or yurts became very popular. I think maybe people were veering away from the crowds and from traditional hotels. Tree houses, that was another one. So when I thought about what might work here at my home, the camper scenario, again, just seemed to be the best fit after doing my research. I already had the ability to hook up the electric and the water and the sewer for it on my property. And so I purchased the camper. I actually purchased it off of I think it might have been listed on Facebook Marketplace, and I purchased it off of there and brought it home and set it up to use as an Airbnb.
And both of your listings seems to attract the same demographic of people. For example, I don't know, maybe more families, more couples.
Actually, they don't. They attract different demographics. So the Airbnb that is in my actual home, that is in my basement, tends to attract more families because it is set up to accommodate up to 6 guests. And so I get a lot of families that have 2, 3, sometimes even 4 children with them. That's not to say that I don't get 4 adults or, you know, a couple of couples staying in there, but in general, it attracts more large families. Also, I have children, and so there is a playground and a trampoline on my property. There's walking trails, hiking trails, a creek. And so all of that, I think, appeals to families. The camper, on the other hand, is quite small. I only have it set up to accommodate 2 guests. And so obviously, I get a lot of couples. I have also gotten a lot of traveling nurses that have chose to come stay there, probably because it's a fairly inexpensive choice and something, again, a little bit different than staying in a traditional hotel.
Mm-hmm. And which one do you find is attracting the best type of guest? Did you encounter any nightmare guest or hard to manage guest in any of your listings?
I have attracted a couple of, I guess you'd call them a nightmare guest, but I really have been quite blessed and not had a horrible experience. I would say probably the worst or most challenging experiences that I've had were guests that chose to smoke inside. And I mean, there really isn't a whole lot you can do about it until they leave, you walk in, it smells like smoke. And, you know, usually they have denied that they smoked there, even if you find the remnants of them smoking. And so basically, I just try to be prepared for every situation. I have an ozone machine, which I'll run in the units to quickly get out any smoke smell. I have a HEPA filter machine that I can run to get out any allergens that might be in the units. And I have 3 or more complete sets of all of my linens at all times in case I walk in and the towels or the linens have been ruined. So just be prepared, you know, is how I've dealt with it.
Yeah, that's good. So you told me that you didn't have really any trouble guests at all, right?
Well, I mean, I would say the ones that went in and were smoking, that's a problem because it creates a lot of extra work to get the smoke smell out of a unit in 4 hours. So yeah,
you've been pretty blessed, to be honest, if you didn't get any trouble guests. Oh, and that leads me to also asking, how is the competition? How is the market in the area you're currently hosting in right now? It was Alto, Georgia, right?
It is in Alto, Georgia. And I would say if you looked in Alto, there probably is not too much competition. However, we are just one small town in Northeast Georgia, and the town of Helen, Georgia, is a little German town, and it in itself is a destination town. So there is a lot of competition in Helen and in the Northeast Georgia mountain area. That said, because I'm not directly in Helen, I can charge less and hopefully, attract and be more affordable to a wider variety of guests.
Right. So you're close enough to Helen for your guests to come to your listings and also go to Helen if that's the city they want to visit, right?
Yes, ma'am. So the majority of my guests that are here to visit the area generally come to visit Helen, to go hiking. They like to come up to visit apple orchards in the fall. We just in March had the Georgia Mountain Wine Festival. So there are a lot of wineries in our area, and you can tour around and visit those with kind of a passport during the month of March. And so I'm within 30 minutes of most of the popular things to do around here, and definitely within an hour of anything. And so it's sort of a central location for people to stay.
Oh, that's really good and really convenient. And,
yes.
So in the area you're hosting, like there in Alto and also around Hellentown, how is the average occupancy rate like, or the seasonality? So sorry, how is the seasonality like there?
Well, the high season is definitely in the summer. Definitely the month of July is the highest season. Although looking back through my listings, this January was also a very high occupancy rate and a high, I guess you'd say a high season. And I can't really tell you why, I don't know, because after that, nationwide, it seemed to drop off for everyone. I think the high gas prices had an effect on Airbnb listings nationwide over the last month or two. But during my high season, I would say that my occupancy rate is between 85 and 90% booked between both my listings. And in the low season, probably around 60 to 65% booked.
Those are really good numbers, to be honest. And,
thank you.
Sorry?
I just said thank you.
Okay. So do you by any chance in, like, for example, the low seasons decide to extend the length of your stays? For example, accept someone who would like to stay a whole month?
Oh, yes. I mean, I generally accept longer stays any time of the year. The way that I have chosen to make my low season profitable is by lowering my rate, my nightly rate, or keeping my rate at what it is and then offering a discount. And on Airbnb, if you offer a 10 to 20% discount, then there are perks that go along with that, depending on the amount of your discount. So for instance, if you offered a 20% discount or more, that has the most perks. They will promote your particular business the most. It'll be the highest up on their page. It gets sent out in email listings. They put little notations and markers on your introduction page to catch people's attention. And so it's between those those two options, I tend to stay pretty well booked.
And aside of choosing to do some discounts throughout the year, what is your pricing strategy?
When I started out, I did research. I looked at comparable listings in my area, and I chose to start out at the lower end of my area to attract guests. And then once I achieved superhost status and had consistent guests, I chose to raise my rates. And so I just incrementally raised them, $5 or $10. I do notice that my weekends are almost always booked. And so I can keep my weekend rates $10 or $15 more per night than my weekday rates all the time. But then, like I said, if I notice bookings are dropping off, we're slow, I'll just lower my rates again. But I do tend to stay on the lower end of the listings for my area.
Okay, sounds good. And have you tried by any chance using some dynamic pricing solution or even Airbnb's smart pricing?
I do use Airbnb's smart pricing. However, I set my lowest and my highest rate because their low rates can be unprofitable, and their high rates would definitely price me out of this market here. It would just be above everything else. And so it has limits that you can set on the low end and on the high end. And I do set those limits. And then again, if I see it that it's a holiday or a weekend and I feel as if their smart pricing is not reflective of the date, that time of year, then I just override it. So.
I see. And how has been your experience so far with the smart pricing? Do you think it's a good tool? Because I've heard from many other hosts that they don't like smart pricing at all. Even setting the lowest price and highest price, they would simply choose not to use it.
Yeah, I've heard the same thing, but I haven't had that problem at all. So for instance, if I know that on the low end, I want my pricing to be $85, and on the weekends, I want it to be, $105, then that's just what I set it on smart pricing, and Airbnb does it for me. I don't have to go through and set each and every day. I don't worry about it.
That's good. It's good to hear that you had a good experience with it.
Yeah, it's worked for me.
Now, I would like to make you some kind of personal questions, if you don't mind sharing about how has been like personally, how you felt your experience renting your own space as someone who has children currently living there.
Yes. So at first, I was very, very concerned because being a single mom with children in the home, you wonder, who's going to be in your house, and how is that going to work out? But again, we have been really blessed with fantastic guests. We do live in a very rural area, and so I think the guests that come here, know that that's what to expect. And everyone has been very kind. Many of the ones that actually stay in my home have children. And just to clarify, when I say that I am renting out the basement in my home, that is their entire space. We do not have contact with those guests unless they're outside. If they're outside, on the lawn, playing, hanging out, whatever, then we might see them out there. Or if they contact me and need something, then I am, I'm right above them. I'm happy to go down and bring more towels or show them how something works or whatever it is that they might need assistance with. But otherwise, it's been great. There have been no unkind guests or and any issues that I have felt with my children being unsafe or anything. Yeah, we've been very blessed.
That's great to hear. And how have you addressed this situation with your children? You always have to, since they live in the same house with you, you might have to tell them, okay, I'm renting the house, setting some rules, explaining them something.
Yes. Yes. So it's a love-hate relationship. So we do have rules, and I don't have any very, very, very small children in the home. So they all understand. Currently, my youngest is 9. And our main rule is they are never, ever, ever to enter either of the Airbnbs under any circumstances. So if a guest asks them to come in, if they have children, they're playing with the children say, come on in, play with us. My younger children know they are not allowed in there under any circumstance at all. So that's one rule. And then our other rule is because for the one that's in the basement, when we have guests down there, do not, stomp, bounce a ball, rollerblade, any of the above over the living room, which is because that is not something that our Airbnb guests want to hear. And they don't always appreciate that, but I remind them that this is how we have chosen to pay our bills and earn an income, and it affords me the ability to be there for them and be flexible, and for us to do all sorts of things. And I do have older children as well, and my older children have even had the opportunity to help me clean the units and learn how to take care of them. And when they do that, I pay them for it just like I would pay anybody else. And it also helps them to have ownership in our home and our business.
Yeah, I agree. That's really brilliant. That's great. So thank you for sharing that with us. I'd like to ask you lastly, what have been your top challenges while running Airbnb?
My top challenges. Well, I think that my top challenge is probably happening right now, and that is learning the taxes. So learning the ins and outs of how to do my business taxes for the government. So I think for me, that's the most difficult.
I see. Actually, I have one last question. That would be, are there any tips that you'd like to share for other Airbnb hosts? Maybe hosts that are also listing their house, that are around your area?
Let's see. I would say 2 of my biggest tips would be clean your space immaculately so that you would be willing to eat off of any surface. Even, underneath the bed where there might be dust bunnies, just clean every little nook and cranny, because a lot of guests really appreciate an immaculate, clean space. And also always try to accommodate or say yes. So for instance, even if it is a rule that you absolutely do not allow, someone sends you a message and says, hey, can we bring our really great dog with us? And no, you might have a no pet policy. And so your answer, instead of just a no, might be something as, I'm so sorry, but due to allergies or whatever your reasoning is for not having other pets on our property, safety reasons, whatever it is, we don't allow dogs. However, here's a list of boarding facilities that are within 5 minutes of our home. That might be a suitable alternative. So I always try to accommodate my guests' requests, even if it's not in the exact way that they might be asking.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, those are really great advice. Sorry. So that would be it for today. Thank you for your time and thank you for your tips.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing a lot about your own personal experience with us.
My pleasure.
Thanks for listening to Into the Airbnb. We are looking for hosts and other people in the short-term rental industry to interview. If you have what we need and would like to share your experience in this podcast, please send us an email. All the info is at the end of the description.